Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you mentees? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at the Miles Morales Spider-Man by Saladin Ahmed Omnibus from Marvel Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So what we're looking at here is the latest Miles Morales Omnibus from Marvel Comics. And before going any further, I do want to thank David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advance copy of this book. This book is due out in the direct market and book market on August 22nd or 23rd, depending on where you get your books. And speaking of direct market and book market, the cover here is the direct market cover by Taryn Clark. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover that's going to be available everywhere. And that is by Hernanda Sosa. And one thing to always keep in mind, well, not always, sometimes they are the same, but the spines in this case are different. So there's two different pictures for the same book. Everything underneath the dust jacket is identical, however. So let's spin it back to the direct market cover. Saladin Ahmed is a perfect fit for Miles Morales. That is a blurb about the run here. Miles Morales, Spider-Man, the Marvel logo by Saladin Ahmed. I will say the font they're using for Saladin Ahmed is a little bit hard to read right there. Chris Allen, Carmen Carnero, Javier Garon, and David Curiel are the artists. I really like just the webbing shooting right there towards your face. Marvel Omnibus, Miles Morales, Spider-Man by Saladin Ahmed, Allen, Carnero, Garon, and Curiel. And then, of course, Miles there. And then the back of the book. I believe this is from the issue that the people that worked on Spider-Verse did, if I'm not mistaken. A little bit about the book, what is collected in here, and then the ISBN. Now, let's look back at the spine, because I'm sure people are wondering, does it match the other books? So, yes, it does. It matches them perfectly. This should be a volume 3, so to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like on the shelf, here we go. Putting it right there after volume 2. And of course, what it looks like all together with Ultimate Spider-Man and keeping a little gap there for volume 3 and volume 4 whenever that's announced. Volume 3 comes out, I believe, later this year. Now, the other thing I was going to say is that this book just came out a couple of weeks ago. This is Miles Morales Spider-Man. This is the Cody Siglar era. So this takes place immediately after the stories here, and this is called Trial by Spider. This was really good. I really dug it. And if you're a fan of Miles, go and check it out. Now, the stuff that's been collected in here has been collected in the past in a series of trade paperbacks to kind of give you an idea of what's collected in here, but this also contains more, which I'll get to when I open the book up. So it's more than just these 8 trade paperbacks that's collected in this omnibus. And again, to kind of give you the difference in the size, how big this omnibus is. The omnibus retails for $125. Let's look underneath the dust jacket, which shows this image of Miles and also Silum and Mind Spinner and Shift. And we'll find out who those characters are here in a little bit. So we are going to crack up the book, and this being volume 3 of Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales, or just Miles Morales, we'll talk a little bit about what's happened previously without going deep into spoilers. But just in case, minor spoilers, there we go. I like to play it safe in case somebody hasn't read this and wants to go completely blind into it. And before I even crack it open, though, if you're wondering if you can go into this without reading the previous 2 volumes, absolutely. What Saladin Ahmed does is start over fresh, not a reboot or anything, but just a fresh start to the character of Miles Morales, and I'll show a little bit of the artwork explaining how he kind of catches you up to speed. Alright, let's get it open. Alright, let's get in here and talk about the latest adventures of Miles Morales. Here's your end sheets. Miles Morales, Spider-Man, And all of the credits, including the writer, Saladin Ahmed, the artist, kicking it off with Javier Garon's run, and David Curiel doing the color. You do have the credits for some of the co-writers, like Tom Taylor, co-writing the Free Comic Book Day issue of Spider-Man Venom, what's collected in here, and then the different artists that worked on this particular book. Now, what is collected in here? So let's talk about that. We have Spider-Man, or Miles Morales Spider-Man, as the series was called, and this is the 2018 series, immediately after Bendis left the book. 1 through 42, so all of it. And then Absolute Carnage, Miles Morales, 1 through 3. Amazing Spider-Man 81, so that crossover is in here. And Miles Morales The End is in here too, which was not collected in the trade paperbacks. And neither was the Miles Morales Absolute Carnage or Amazing Spider-Man 81. Those were collected in other trades, but not the ones that I showed, not the 8. And then also material from Free Comic Book Day 2019 Spider-Man Venom and Incoming number 1, as well as Amazing Spider-Man number 49. And those are just a couple of pages. And then we also have the annual in here, annual number 1. All right, so we are kicking it off with the first issue. We see what Miles has been up to, and it's done in a really unique way because his homework assignment is to write a journal entry. So he's writing journal. I love this cover, by the way. It is freaking awesome. And the cover is it Brian Stilfreeze, I think? Let's see here. Cover art, Brian Stilfreeze, issue number 1, and then Marco de Alfonso's 2. Yeah, that is a killer cover. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So Miles is back in the 616 universe, and that's where he's been for a little bit since volume 2 of Ultimate Spider-Man. You can find out how, though, by reading the books. I'm not going to spoil that. And while he's going to school, he's given an assignment, and the assignment is to go and start a journal. And he finds that writing this journal is kind of his way of letting his feelings out about being Spider-Man, where he's limited to who he can tell. Like his parents know, Genki knows, and a couple of the other superheroes know his secret identity. You can find out who those superheroes are by reading actually this book. But he feels like he's got all this inside information that he just wants to let out. So he writes it in journal entries, talking about his relationship with his parents, his friends, who knows his secrets, who his uncle is. Now, the one thing to keep in mind, like I said, because of the events of Secret Wars, Miles is now the 2018 or 2015 Secret Wars. Miles is now in the 616 universe. And what I mean by 616 universe, that is the universe that Peter Parker since 1962 has been a part of. So he's no longer in the Ultimate Universe. Although we may see some characters from the Ultimate Universe in here, and we'll talk a little bit about that without going into too many spoilers. So we're catching up with his friends. He's friends with Judge. He's friends with Genki. His girlfriend is Barbara. These are characters that appeared in Brian Michael Bendis' era of Spider-Man. However, there's going to be some new characters appearing through here. The first story arc involves the Rhino, and this actually cracked me up the first time I read this in trade, when the Rhino's like, look, this is none of your damn business. Just go home and play your Sega or whatever. And Miles is like, dude, how old are you? Sega? I thought that was funny. He does have a voice. He uses more of a teenage voice than Brian Michael Bendis did. Like, he says things like teenagers would say. I assume they still talk like this. Like, they use IRL in real life. Okay, so back to the main plot, though. The plot is that these kids, one of them hitting really close to home, Eduardo, because his parents were deported because of immigration, and Miles is feeling really close to this kid because he's half Latino, or just because he's a really good kid and has a good heart. But one of them is being brainwashed, along with a bunch of other kids, to just be these mindless soldiers. So somebody is kidnapping these kids, and he has to ally himself with the Rhino. And the Rhino actually has some really good character development here, which I hadn't seen in a while for the character of the Rhino. And I always love when writers do that, when writers take these pre-existing villains and kind of giving them more and more of a deeper characterization. It's part of the reason why I love Jeff Johns' run on The Flash. You take establishing villains that, I don't want to say were always one-dimensional, because the Rhino has been used in really good stories in the past, but it's been a while. So kids are being kidnapped. Miles is trying to figure out who it is, and together with the Rhino and the help of some of Earth's mightiest heroes like Captain America, they go and try to find out where these kids are. That's pretty much the first story arc through here. You get to see his relationship with Barbara, how he's trying to balance that life out because Barbara doesn't know that he's also Spider-Man, so he has to kind of cut his dates short. And he wants to spend, he's a teenager, of course he wants to spend time with her. You do see the introduction of new villains, and one of my favorite things that Saladin Ahmed does to cause more of the teenage trauma is that the principal at the school that Miles is going to is wondering where the heck Miles has been. Why is he always running late? Why is he always missing school? So he takes it upon himself to just go out there and investigate. And it really is the trope of like adults not understanding kids. It's written from the perspective of the kid, and we've seen that in comics before. We've seen it done really bad too, because I feel like some writers always use adults as the enemies. And then some writers show you both sides of the story, right? That's what I did dig about Brian Michael Bendis' run on Miles Morales, because he shows both sides of like the parent side of things, and then Miles snapping at his parents. Saladin Ahmed, that's the same thing. But I think like Saladin Ahmed really has a good voice for the character of Miles too. It makes him seem like a teenager going through teenage trouble. We have the introduction of this young lady right here, Tanya. This is Starling, who is a brand new character who's using these superpowers of wings to help out Miles, but there's misunderstandings at first because that's what heroes do. They misunderstand each other. We have his connection with his uncle right here, who has his own secrets. I do love that his family just keeps having secrets. Now, this is where it gets really creepy. Because he is kidnapped by this character named Quantum, and then we see the Assessor show up. It's this really creepy robotic creature that is just torturing him and could be running experiments on him. We don't know what his end game is, and I love the way that this issue is drawn too. This is so good. And don't get me wrong, I love Javier Garon. I think he did an amazing job in the first 6 issues. But I believe this is Ron Akins and Dexter Vines doing these particular issues right here. Just for a couple of them. We have his connection with Spider-Man here, and variant covers on the left-hand side sometimes oppose the side of the, or on the opposing side of the standard edition cover. Now, after the big story arc where he gets kidnapped, teaming up with the Prowler, we do have nicely placed the Absolute Carnage issues, or the stories that kick off Absolute Carnage. This is the Spider-Man team up with Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And it's really cool, like when you see his journal entries, how much he looks up to Peter Parker and how highly he thinks of him. Like that is the true Spider-Man, and it's so cool that the real Spider-Man, like it's adorable, calls me Spider-Man. This is the way kids talk, or a kid would talk. That, well, a kid with respect, right? Gotta respect them adults. Absolute Carnage, like I said, beautifully placed. So mapping is awesome. By the way, if anybody recognizes these characters, I hope it's because of the anime and not the Netflix adaptation. But yes, Faye and Ein. There's a couple of other Easter eggs through here. Absolute Carnage. This is during the events of said title, Absolute Carnage. They don't really give you kind of a heads up what's going on in the story. You just kind of figure it out that, oh, okay, Cletus Cassidy, Carnage is going after people that have been taken over by the symbiotes, and they're going after codexes. Okay, yeah, cool. And Miles is involved, and so is the Scorpion. So Guardian is involved there. And then we jump after that storyline to more of the fight with the Prowler and teaming up with the Prowler. You get some returning villains here from the past and newer villains and characters. And him kind of developing sort of a cute crush on Starling. Now, when we get to this particular story arc here, this is the Ultimatum story, which reintroduces people to the Ultimate Green Goblin. So how is he here? And is he alone? Well, no, not really. because who's with him is Ultimatum, and in here you can find out who Ultimatum is and his relationship to these characters. This is a little bit of the incoming storyline in here. And then we are introduced to somebody that has very similar powers to Miles Morales here. Who is this guy? All right, so this is the Ultimatum character right here. And there's a big storyline with them and the Avengers, teaming up with the Avengers. I thought this was a really cute issue right here with the relationship between Starling and Spider-Man just growing and growing, or Miles Morales Spider-Man. This is all part of the King in Black. And one thing I will say, even though this is, of course, placed properly because this is issue 23 following the ending of issue 22, is I wish they had kind of given you like a recap of what the King in Black was. Because, I mean, he does do a good job of saying, hey, Donny Cates is having fun with this big King in Black crossover. But we're just focusing on some dragons that Noel sent down here. So that's what we're doing. And yeah. The artwork, by the way, I feel like is really brought together by David Curiel, the color artist. Like, you have the earlier issues here, and this is all Javier Garon, and then when you get, to the middle of the stories in here, you have some stuff by Aaron Cooter, who just shows a little bit of the Amazing Spider-Man part. But you have Carmen Carnero, you have Marcelo Ferreira, Victor Olazaba, and I think the color, as Curiel's colors, just brings it all together. So it kind of does feel like the same kind of art. And these are the characters that you saw in underneath the dust jacket. You have Selim, and he actually, it's I'm sure most of you figured out that it's Miles spelled backwards, but there's an actual definition to his name. Then you have Shift, and oh my gosh, I love Shift. Like, at first I hated these characters so much because, in my eyes I'm like, we've already done this kind of story. We've seen this stuff left and right. Do we need Miles to go through this stuff? Well, you can find out for yourself when by reading it. And then this is Mind Spinner right there. All Shift says is gloop, gloop, something like that, like swallowing. But there's a big fight between these characters and Miles, misunderstandings, and then, of course, redemptions. By the end of that story arc, his costume is shredded, and that's probably when you've seen the pictures of this new costume. Now, the same thing, whenever I did my overview of the trade paperbacks, is, well, we'll talk about the new costume debut here in a minute. This is the annual right here, the team up with Amulet, a character from Miss Marvel. There's the new costume. And what I was going to say is that the new costume, I think depending on the artist, it works. And then sometimes it didn't. I don't know why. I feel like some artists had a better grasp of the costume and the way that it moves. And then others were just like, this costume doesn't really work. Now, this is the issue right here with, right here. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, Academy Award nominees. And then, of course, hopefully maybe this year they'll win something for the Beyond the Spider-Verse. Not or Across the Spider-Verse, that's what it is. So there's a story in here by them, and then there is a peek at Miles' life from two rising stars, Cody Sigler, who went on to write the new series, which is actually pretty solid. Again, variant covers sometimes on the opposite page of the standard edition covers. And here's the fight with the Taskmaster and Quantum, this guy right here, making a return. That creepy guy. Now, there's time travel in here and multiverse stuff, so enjoy this because it goes places that I didn't expect it to go. I will say the story moves pretty quick in the last 2/3 of the book. It's like the third act. I don't know if Saladin Ahmed was trying to wrap up his stories or if it was planned that way, but it feels like he took his time at the beginning with the character development, because there is some really dramatic things that happen in Miles' life, and I mean that like a normal teenage drama. Like, he feels betrayal, he feels like all these things that just are against him. And a lot of it is just over dramatic. But then when he gets to the last third, it's just like, all right, let's just go ahead and wrap up this storyline. Let's have him go into this particular universe, if you will. But that's where I'll leave it. And then he ends with issue 42. Now, the cool thing is, all the way in the back, and I'm so glad to see this artist. This is Damian Scott on art. But this is Miles Morales, The End. Now, Marvel has done, he's done Logan, The End, or not Old Man Logan, just Wolverine, The End. That's what it was called. He's done Fantastic Four, The End, X-Men. X-Men, The End was 3 miniseries, and I loved every bit of it with Sean Chin on artwork, and of course, Chris Claremont writing it. This is just a one-shot, and it's about Miles Morales and teaming up with some people in the future. Now, Damian Scott, I don't know if people are familiar with him or not. His art style's changed over the years, but oh my gosh, his Cassandra Cain Batgirl with Kelly Puckett, that stuff. One day I'd love to see DC do an omnibus of that. But he's the one that wraps up the series here. And then you move to the back, so let's get everybody welcoming back all the people that didn't want any kind of spoilers. More power to you. And looking at the back matter, mostly full of extras. You have spread pages, and you have splash pages full of extras. You also have thumbnail pages. And for the people that watch the whole thing, they know that sometimes the covers, the variant covers, are on the opposite page of the standard edition covers. And it doesn't make any sense sometimes, because you'll see like Absolute Carnage, Miles Morales, issue number 3, like all the way on the opposite side of like Miles Morales Spider-Man issue number 29, which takes place way after Absolute Carnage. Some covers that this is him hanging out with the champions. This right here being the Taran Clark cover that is used for the direct market. And I believe, there it is, the Hernanda Sosa. This is the one that they use for the standard edition. Man Thing Mondays, baby, we're back. Rob Liefeld. So all kinds of artists just coming and drawing this particular character. And you see the frame, which is actually a pretty cool frame. The thing to keep in mind is when this book was coming out in 2018, that's when we got into the Spider-Verse, the first movie. And it was right after the events of Spider-Geddon, too. So you'll see a little bit of that in here, especially with the Miles taking the lead. There's some other variant covers. An Ultron? Yes, always keep in mind that some of these are just covers. Stuff doesn't really happen on the inside. I think I've had some viewers in the past going, why did you show that cover? I'll just say yes, not every cover has a story inside. Sometimes variants are just variants. Is that Damian Scott? That looks like, yeah, Damian Scott right there. Big fan. Still with that art style change. Still love it. Has a big anime influence. I think those were the design variants there. And then your end sheets. Alright, let's look at the binding. 1,160 pages and sewn binding. This is what the eye looks like. We've seen bigger. We've also seen smaller. Printed at the iMac printer. So the paper stock is this glossy paper. It's not as thin as we've seen them, but there's still some bleed through. Like, I don't even know what to call normal bleed through anymore. If I see boxes coming from the other side, it's just kind of become normal for some omnis. You know, some omnis still use like really thick glossy paper, but it's not as thin as I've seen some in the past either. Like the JMS Spider-Man, the second printing of that omnibus, had really thin paper, or the Conan Busiek omnibus. So you can see like some of the caption boxes or the frames coming from the opposite page when it's really light colors or whites like that. Now, as far as the actual gutter loss, here's a good example of what it looks like. You do get some gutter loss right there where you have to hold it down, and that's just the way the book lays over because of that eye. So, just to kind of give you an idea. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you're picking it up, if you're continuing your journey with Ultimate Spider-Man, I guess, even though he's just Spider-Man. Or if you're continuing your journey with Miles Morales, and what you thought of the run in case you've already read it. And if you are picking up this omnibus, which cover you're going to go for. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button on the way out. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.